The place, the Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The date, December 16, 1944. The occasion, Day 1 of the Battle of the Bulge. Desperate to change the tide of the war they had been losing since the D-Day invasion, the Germans launched the last major offensive of World War II. Called the greatest American battle of the war by Winston Churchill, the Battle of the Bulge was Adolf Hitler's last major offensive against the Western Front. Hitler's aim was to split the Allies in their drive toward Germany. The assault came in early morning at the weakest part of the Allied line, an 80-mile poorly protected stretch of hilly, woody forest. The Allies simply believed the Ardennes too difficult to traverse, and therefore an unlikely location for a German offensive. They were mistaken. The Germans threw 250,000 soldiers into the initial assault, 14 German infantry divisions guarded by 5 panzer divisions against a mere 80,000 Americans. Richard Coyle, a lineman in the Army, describes what he experienced when the attack began.
I was doing guard duty at 5:30 in the morning on December the 16th, and some shells started to come in, and I thought, this isn't right, and it wasn't right. And in another 5 or 6 hours, we were up trying to defend. I wasn't a rifleman. I was a field lineman trying to lay wire out to those guys so they could call for support.
As the Germans drove into the Ardennes, the Allied line took on the appearance of a large bulge, giving rise to the battle's name. The artillery barrages were so severe that Thaddeus Watson, a member of the 351st Artillery Unit, bled from his ears.
You couldn't put nothing to heal because you got to hear the commands as they come down.
Between the vulnerability of the thin, isolated American units and the thick fog that prevented Allied air cover from discovering German movement, the Germans were able to push the Americans into retreat. Veteran Donald Green describes the chaos of the day.
We were an army in full-blown retreat. Some of us were fortunate enough to scrounge up some sea rations, and we went by different overrun units or abandoned units, and we scrounged whatever we could eat. I talked to some farmer out of 3 raw potatoes.
As the first day ended, the Germans were still on the offensive. But while American forces and their allies would bend, they would not break. After 6 weeks of brutal fighting, 23 days in a row with temperatures below 0 degrees, and over 100,000 casualties suffered by the U.S. Army, the battle would finally end with Allied victory on January 25, 1945. The march to Berlin was on. The end of the war was in sight.